Also, do you want us to introduce you as the Lorryist or Graham? Like, how pseudonym are you?
Graham will do. We stick to first names. I'm quite happy with first
names.
So
you don't want to like feed like your internet alter ego of like the Lorryist?
Whatever makes you happy.
It's not as ominous as Bronze Age pervert, but I mean, it's kind of in the same ballpark.
I would be Diesel Age pervert. Well, I don't know.
Den unge mand, han revolutionær.
The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice.
How dare you?
Omar Bradley, the US general from the Second World War, once made a remark that amateurs talk strategy, whereas professionals talk logistics. And given our need in this podcast to understand the present-day political issues of the day and the inner workings of the regime, we thought it relevant to get someone who truly knows logistics onto the podcast. So there we have it, the Lorryist, or Graham. Most welcome to Manifest Podden.
Welcome, Graham.
Thank you.
In terms of then logistics, you are currently out driving now, but your Wi-Fi is okay, no?
No, I'm at home. I'm back to work tomorrow. I'm not sure how much I can tell you about logistics in a big picture kind of way, because obviously I'm in amongst it, so I may not be able to see the wood for the trees. But yeah, we can talk about that. It's a great quote. I know that quote, and it's a fantastic quote, yes.
It's also this kind of like Fox News anchor who would be like, so you have the view from the ground, the perspective from where you are.
Boots on the ground, yeah.
Yeah, US pundit way of saying like you're actually doing something.
What would be the view from the shop floor, as it were? It's very quiet at the moment. There's a lot of talk about the markets going up and down, stock markets and currencies moving around and so on. From where I am, it looks like we're pretty much in a recession where, things are very quiet at work. A while back, a couple of weeks ago, I had to take some time off of work. I found my truck hadn't moved for 5 days. Now they don't do that. It's $100,000 piece of equipment. They're not going to let it sit around not making money for 5 days. But there wasn't work for it, and that's really unusual. A friend of mine in America has been laid off. There's rumours of other layoffs in different places, although that hasn't really happened.
So, but wait. So when you say at work, you mean when you are on the road, you see less traffic, less other Lorryists.
There is less traffic. Yeah, there's less cars and trucks. You know what the traffic's like here, Johan. It's Johan. Sorry, must get it right.
Well, either works.
Okay. Yeah, the traffic's been quite not too bad. It's always can be bad in places in the UK, but the work's just less. We're doing less hours. Agency drivers aren't getting work. In the US, where they get paid by the mile, their rates have gone down. So, and generally that's across the piece. So I've got a friend in the Philippines who works for a freight forwarder, and it's quiet over there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the view from logisticians and people working in logistics at the moment would appear to be the economy is not doing very well at all. But the stock market's up, so they're all happy about that.
And that's the sort of dichotomy and sort of picture of the regime, if you will, we're dealing with here. Isn't it? In a sense, I think in the West or anywhere in the world, we have the people versus the stock market, or Main Street versus Wall Street, or whatever sort of analogy you want to make it. But it very much seems like stock markets are or people at the top are doing better than basically any time ever.
Well, yeah. Well, that's been true for a long time. I mean, you look at things like luxury goods have been on a tear since the great financial crisis. Well, you'd think it would be the opposite. People wouldn't be selling or buying, high-end cars and works of art and fine wines and houses in the south of France. You think those would be in the doldrums, but those have been tearing ahead, whilst at the same time people with more ordinary jobs are struggling and have been struggling for some time. I mean, people have noted that real wages haven't risen since the 1970s for most people. So there's certainly something that's wrong. That's putting it rather mildly. You could say, well, that's an utter rip-off, and we're basically being robbed blind, and we have been for some time with what's been going on. I'm sure you're aware of something called the Cantillon effect, which
I'm not.
No. Give it a go.
It's the Cantillon effect. It's basically when the money supply is increased, those nearest the supply gain from it, which makes sense. You run a tap, it's the person with their mouth closest to the tap that's going to get most of the water. So what's happened is they've had this massive amount of money printing, and it's gone to certain parts of the economy and not others. And usually those other parts are the actual productive parts, like farming, like manufacturing, like trucking. And these are all of the parts of the economy that are struggling, as far as I can see. But then you've got things like financial services. It's quite extraordinary when you think that, they got us into this massive calamity back in 2008 into 2009. But by a year later, they're back at the Lamborghini dealership buying 2 new cars.
Yeah.
And it's this whole socialism for the rich has been violently unfair and theft, really. I think it was only in Iceland that they actually sent people to prison for fraud over the financial crisis. And I believe they sent people to prison for precisely the same things that were happening in New York and London. I might be wrong, but I think it's... Yeah.
But on Iceland, they believe in fairies, so that's maybe the secret mixture here.
I think this part of England, we believe in fairies quite a lot as well. But
I believe in anything. It's just as long as it puts, bankers in prisons. I think I'm quite proud of being Swedish over one particular part of our financial history in the early 90s, or I'd say mid 90s, when we had the sort of housing crisis that the world sort of handled or didn't handle rather in 2008 and 9. We basically nationalized the major banks who were at fault, and their stockholders got wiped out, and they were taken over by they were recapitalized by other people and weren't obviously nationalized in a sort of Soviet sense, but people who sort of stood to gain from just doing it the way we've done it in the UK and the EU and the US, by just letting the taxpayer pay the bill for all these stockholders of giant banks.
Yeah,
it's just a shame, and it's just gone on. I mean, it's sort of a personal thing for me, actually, because and this is sort of telling maybe of my background. My mother worked in bank for 35 years actually, and she was basically running the they had the accounting for or the accounts rather, which were pretty small, but by Swedish standards, but she handled Lehman Brothers in the accounts in Sweden. And it was pretty funny to see, because when this happened, and you're talking to her, and she being like from a very Swedish mindset, and not very much of the sort of London or New York banker sort of background, she was like, it was really weird watching her dealing with the sort of the stuff that took place. And she'd always say, no, but they will still correct itself, and you'll have regulations, and myself being like this sort of student libertarian back in the day, I would say, well, I mean, how are they going to regulate this away? Because it doesn't really seem possible. It hasn't been possible ever to sort of, you have to either break them down or put some incentives in place to make this work for the people. And it's interesting because like this has been the view since that, there's going to be a correction somewhere, someone is going to do something. And it's very much the thinking of the sort of old regime, if you will, that this is self-correcting, that there's a system in place, that don't worry about it, guys. Somebody somewhere is really managing this, and it's not, obviously. I mean,
well, you could see it as not wanting to kill the parasite because that would also kill the host.
Yeah,
that's how it strikes me, which might be true. But then you might need to ask the question: well, who's the host? Am I part of the host? I don't think so. So, and is the host helping me? I mean, it does. So I'm straining this analogy perhaps too much, but it's not actually the host that I wanted. I didn't want the parasite or the host. And is the kind of joy in doing anyone any good? Maybe we should kill the host. Maybe he's going to die anyway. I think that's the most likely thing. I think I'm. Can you be a disasterist? I think it's all going to go down in some way or other. It might degenerate into something like the old Soviet Union, terribly autocratic and murderous.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe this is an interesting starting point. I don't know. I want Graham to sort of tell his story because I think it's fascinating. I mean, Graham might not think so, but I really, Johan introduced your work to me, and you said, I was just at this shadowy meeting in London, and I met this guy Graham. He writes a blog called The Lorryist, and I was like, the lobbyist? Yeah. Really? Are we talking to these sort of people right now? No, the Lorryist. And I was like, yeah, okay. And he drives a lorry. Oh, right. And he told the story, and I thought, well, brilliant. And I read your stuff, and it's fascinating. But the sort of comes to the heart of the matter really is you being a Briton, or this sort of, in a sense, started in the UK with the sort of Thatcher politics, maybe. Or do you think that's fair? Because from a sense, the financialization of sort of the economies of the West sort of started with the whole, in my view anyway, in the sort of 80s with Reagan and Thatcher. And maybe, I think there's something there maybe worth taking up, or do you agree?
But just clarify, when Calais says Lorryist to all our non-manual working listeners, Graham drives a truck.
Yes,
that's a good clarification, because most of the people listening probably won't know that. Yeah.
Do you think it perhaps actually goes back to when the US came off with the gold standard, though?
See, I grew up sort of, in the right wing sort of libertarian circles, and I've a lot of friends spend a lot of time talking about gold. So for one, I'm sort of a bit allergic to that sort of explanation. But yes, in a sense, yes. But the problem is this. So since sort of, I mean, a lot of people want to blame credit for, the just general term credit, or the philosophical concept.
Wait, again, kind of this is the analytical explanation, but I'm thinking like we could actually just start with like basically how you got red pilled.
Or who is Graham?
I go back, something we talked about.
We sat at the cafeteria in like the south, what is it, like East End or?
Yeah, in the East End, yeah.
Yeah, and you were like, you made some remark like, gosh, this place has changed since I was here.
So I'm from London, not from that exact part of London, but I am from Southeast London. So I'm a Cockney, so I'm a proper Londoner. Although my parents are from elsewhere, I'll skip most of my childhood if you don't mind. How I came to be red pilled, well, I think the process is still in progress, but it was long. This is where it connects with the Honduras thing. Can I talk about that?
No, go at it.
So it's 2012, and I'd just been. Now I didn't go to university as a young person, but I was accepted to go to Coventry to study logistics.
Is this after you were in Iraq?
Yes. Oh, yes. So I was in Iraq 2003, 2005. Oh, yeah. I was a territorial army soldier before all of this. But it's all educational. But we could. I won't need to go into that. I served in Basra for 2 6-month tours. One in 2003, one in 2005 as infantry soldier, ordinary grunt, doing guard duty and patrols and nothing really, dramatic. But you could say, there were parts of that. There were parts of my childhood that, my upbringing. My dad was a church leader, and growing up in the inner city, when your dad is a church leader in the East End of London, is interesting, shall we say? So perhaps I was starting off in a different place from other people when I came by all of this stuff. So it was 2012, and like I say, I'd been accepted to university, and I had great hopes of what might happen. And I was doing a Google search because I'm quite adventurous. I've always been, want to get out and explore. And I thought, if I get this degree, what can I then do? Maybe I could, Singapore is a logistics hub. Maybe I could work in Singapore. And it was just a thought. It's just one of these random little things. A thought comes in your head, and I'll punch that into Google, see what comes up. And another one was Hong Kong. So maybe I'd get a job in Hong Kong. I had an uncle who worked in Hong Kong. And so I punched in jobs in Hong Kong. And this article came up from The Economist called Hong Kong in Honduras. And it's like, what the hell is that? But my ex-wife is from Brazil. So I knew a little about Latin America. And it was like, what is this about? And at the time, I had great trust in the Economist. So I read this, and it was about the charter cities idea. And I don't know if you know about this, but this is basically it was basically just that. It was to try and replicate something like Singapore or Dubai or Hong Kong in Honduras, and there was these great plans to do it. And in my naivety, I looked at that. I thought, what a fantastic idea! I want to be part of that. That's going to be something that, because I've been to Brazil and I'd seen the corruption and bureaucracy in that place, and presumed correctly, actually, as it turned out, that Honduras was somewhat similar, and thought, well, okay, let's try and get involved. It's very. I mean, I look back. It's almost like I don't want to admit it. I'm quite shy about it because it's like, what? I was working. My daughter had just been born. I had things to do. I shouldn't have been going off on wild goose chases and getting involved in these things. But let's try and get involved in that. And let's see if I can. So, with great boldness or stupidity, I'm not sure, I wrote to the guy who did a TED talk. There's a guy called Paul Reimer who's now, I think, chief economist for, want to say, the World Bank, or it might be the IMF, I've forgotten. But anyway, he did this TED talk about these charter cities, and you can find it still online. It's from 2009. And I listened to that and thought, that's great, that's fantastic, let's do that. And I wrote to his office in New York and said, hey, I'm a truck driver from the UK, I want to be part of your project. And I hear some ideas, which were part of the thing about charter cities was it's almost like you'd take components of another regime, the legal regime, you take parts of it and plug it into this new city. So the city would have a charter, and you basically have a business plan which says, we're going to use common law of the UK. And I think about, what can I do there? Well, I say, okay, so road traffic law in the EU has worked, fairly good. I'm not sure I agree with myself now, but that's what I wrote about. I said, what about, when do you do this thing? Because again, I was naive enough to believe they would actually do it. And of course they didn't really. When you do this thing, I think this is the legal system you should use in your plug and play, legal framework for trucks. And very politely, one of his minions wrote back to me. He's probably quite a hard-fighting guy, actually. I shouldn't say that. But this guy wrote back to me and said, you're a bit too early then. You're a bit too early for that stage of level of detail. But thank you very much for writing to us. And then they kind of went dead. And then I thought, well, there's other people involved. And in the Economist article, there were other people involved. So there was Patrick Friedman, who's the grandson of Milton Friedman. And there's another guy called Michael Strong, and they had backing from Silicon Valley people. And I thought, I'll write to these guys as well. But I couldn't find any contact details. I couldn't. And you've got to remember, this was, 10 years ago isn't a very long time, but you couldn't really quite get in touch with people the way you can now. We didn't have social media, really. Not in quite the same way. It was there, but it wasn't as developed, where you could get in touch with anyone in the world, it seems, now. So I thought, well, how can I kind of flush people out who are also interested in this? And I thought, well, why don't I write a blog? I'd open a Blogspot account and write a blog and just talk about this charter cities idea, or free cities, as these other guys were calling it, and started to do this, and this worked. And a guy who was a law professor from Southern California got in touch with me and said, have you got any ideas about this, and this? He wanted to know about an airport. I know very little about airports. I did a few flying lessons when I was in my 20s, and that was it. But I gamely opened up Google Maps and, hey, there's a good place for an airport. And he must have known as little as I did, because he thought it was great. So we developed that kind of talk, and I do another blog post again where I talk about road traffic regulation. Now I discover that these guys are libertarians. Okay, I didn't know what libertarian was. Okay, I didn't know it's some American thing. I didn't know it. And my political view, at the time I would have called myself middle of the road, by which I meant I just believed the BBC. So I really didn't think much about it. I was busy. I had a job. I had to study. I had kid, married, church, lots of things going on in my life. I didn't have time for this. But these guys were libertarians. And I was like, I want to get involved with this thing. So therefore, let's learn about that. So it wasn't because I was seeking some ideological path to go on, or that I was on some ideological path and then found that one and it took me away. It was simply because I wanted to get involved in that project. So I've wanted to learn what they were talking about. So I read books by Isabel Patterson, some papers by Friedrich Hayek, David Friedman, who was Patrick Friedman's father, Milton Friedman's son, and thought, okay, well, this makes enough sense to me. That's I can get with that. I can live with it. I wrote another blog post again, which was about road safety, kind of putting myself in the libertarian shoes and how would I do it? And I can't remember what I wrote for the life of me, and I've deleted it now, which I shouldn't have done. But they loved it. And then the guys invited me onto this Facebook group. And then through the Facebook group, they invited me to a meeting in Guatemala.
Of course.
And
why do all these people meet in some Latin American country? Is it always like, I was about to say, does it start or does it end in Latin America? What's
what? Sorry, you mean?
I don't know, like political projects that are libertarian leaning.
I think it's mainly because it's an American's backyard.
Yeah.
I think it's as simple as that. I don't think it's more complicated than that. Paul Romer had gone all over Africa from 2009 to when I saw the thing, until Honduras had taken an interest, because they had taken an interest in him initially and his idea. The libertarian guys kind of changed it. And then it got into the Honduran political system and kind of changed again. But again, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself again. But and this was as simple as that. So I went to this. I had to crowdfund a ticket. I succeeded in I didn't have enough money to get a ticket to Guatemala.
Wow.
And somehow people had got into their head that I owned my own business and I was reasonably well off. I don't know why nobody thought to ask, why is that guy needed to crowdfund a ticket then? But never mind. So they invited me there, didn't speak any Spanish, met a guy there who was in Honduras, had a business in Honduras, was involved or wanted to be involved in this, or was tangentially connected, I think is the best way of putting it. Very nice guy, Italian guy. And he said, hey, I can find a job for you. In my organization, and you can move to Honduras. And I was like, yeah, okay. This had gone on for now a year or so before I got to that stage. And I was then getting ready for my second year at university, and university was kind of, I didn't really know what to expect. Like I say, I left school at 15. I hadn't studied much, and I was kind of disenchanted by university anyway. It just didn't seem very powerful. So at least not what I was doing. Who knows? It might have been the right thing to do, but I left that and before I racked up too much debt, and went off to Honduras to have 2 years of madness. Well, I won't go into everything that happened, but it was quite interesting, I must say. And it was a kind of crash course in where this kind of charter city, free city idea meets reality. I think that's the best way of describing it. It's kind of having a very close look. I met some very important, very interesting people.
What was your takeaway from those 2 years in Honduras? And
there were many takeaways. How long you got? Takeaway was, oh my God, I've got in over my head. I think my main takeaway from all of from everything I learned in that and everything I learned subsequently is, yes, we might see city states. We might see Yarvin's idea of patchwork. I think we probably will. Hopefully we will, but it might happen more organically. I didn't. The idea of the modern state, started in 1648, and I think it's going to take quite something to dislodge that as a power element, as the main power element in the world. That's how the world works now. That's we're all fish swimming in that water, and its death throes have started.
Just to interject here, in a way I understand, like in the 70s, like in Sweden, there were numerous young idealistic political radicals. I'm not sure if you would be fine with that labeling, but at least from Sweden, political radicals going to Latin America, first as part of like, aid or development projects, but very quickly drifting over into outright political military organization as part of coups going through these countries. Obviously now I'm referring to like leftist organization. They're not joining the Contras. So I mean, this is something that the parents in like mine and Calais' parents' generation, this is quite vivid, and my own sense is in a way like there's a romantic shimmer on this in a way, but my view is more like, say, from that Marxist or nominally Marxist at least background. But what I'm also wanting a way to have Calais interject here as someone who's been through like the neoliberal or libertarian zeitgeist in a way, like, I mean, obviously coming in on the tail end of this, but you see this project going through the early 2010s, and then sort of like the rubber hits the road. I'm mindful of using the trucker lingo here.
There's so many of them, isn't there? Yeah.
Hello, fellow truckers. But Kalle, do you want to interject here, or am I trying to plaster the libertarian creed?
No. Not at all. I mean, I'm very struck by the similarities in a sense. Graham was more wise, not knowing what libertarianism was. I was very much steeped in it, being sort of want to be, very pretentious sort of young student, want to be intellectual. I'd also read Friedman and the Austrian school and indeed subscribed to The Economist magazine, which sort of was then the orthodoxy of as they would say themselves, extreme centrist views. I think that was the official position of the paper, being centrist extremists, and because they supported various parties in various countries, blah blah. But I'm very struck, I think, by Graham's relation to Honduras, in the sense that, this was sort of the death throes of the sort of libertarian, I would say maybe naive project in a sense, because and the analogies to, the US and I guess NATO Western projects in Afghanistan and Iraq are there as well, because in all these places, all the three places, you have basically ideology, trying to impose ideology on reality. And you have places with a history, with languages, with culture that's sort of will not conform to Western standards of what they should be, in the sense that you can't just build a constitutional republic in Iraq or just introduce feminist studies into Afghanistan and
you
these
can
places
try, clearly.
Yeah, you can, and we have. We've thrown a lot of money at it.
Ridiculous thing. Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of, I know people who've been in the Swedish army and been to Afghanistan myself. So, which is interesting, fascinated in a sense, right? Because we're supposed to be the most neutral country, I guess now we're soon to be in the NATO as well. But this sort of, to me, stinks of ideology. It's very much an ideological project that sort of today is unthinkable, I would dare to say. That, this sort of the time for this sort of hubristic thinking has hopefully, I'd say, passed. But since it was such a crushing failure, it's also paved the way for a new sort of thinking that's explicit in, the Brexit movement and Trumpism in the US. But also, I think why me and Johan are doing this podcast, because it's sort of reconfigured not only the world, but the way we think about it in that sense. So I'm very fascinated about it, because I did read about the Honduran project myself and thought it sort of a Ayn Randian or very libertarian sort of utopia, right? You could make a Singapore in Honduras. Tragically, reality didn't live up to our expectations.
Well, there is a project. There is something going on the island of Rantan, which is beautiful by all accounts. I haven't been there myself, but it's on in the Caribbean, a Honduran island, and it's kind of a real estate project on steroids. They'll probably be very upset with me for saying that, but that's how it looks. It was certainly not this vision of a brand new Singapore on the banks of the Caribbean. Banks of the Caribbean? Shores, sorry. Not it's all part of the mix. It's all part of what's going on. And I think there have been things going on increasingly, and I think they will grow more and more. And again, I mean things that are moving to take place in the Westphalian state, because it's that I'm a truck driver, so I'm very cautious about talking to you guys because being historians and so on, I imagine you know a fair bit more than I do. You should do, but I read a book. I listened to it again, and when I say I read, I meant I listened to an audiobook. That's how I consume.
No, but I think this is actually what makes this interesting, because there's one hand, like, sure, we have the ideas, the content you mentioned, like Curtis Yarvin earlier, but I think it's equally relevant here to get a sense of how this material comes your way, because when you, as you say, your reading of them is in audio version while trucking.
Yes. I was talking about this with a friend today on Twitter, and he's another driver, and he's also quite well read. I think he should, one of these guys who should put himself out a bit more and get out in public a little bit more, but he doesn't want to. But
is this diesel age pervert you're referring to now?
No, this is another guy. He's anonymous online, so I won't say. I don't think he wants a wide following. But anyway, we were talking about this, and he was saying, well, in some ways, you're almost meditating when you're driving. You're driving long distance. You know, I did European work, and you'd have 4 days to get down to Spain. Well, that's a lot of time on your own, and all of that time, I'll be listening to something.
You're doing the trucker Vipassana.
Sorry,
what is that?
No, this is just like all what the Berliner vegans go on, like, oh, I'm in Spain on this trek where I'll be silent.
Your references are slightly above our pay grade, I think. We're not Berlin vegans, none of us. So
this is the trucker avocado toast podcast, no?
No. Avocado toast. The avocados go in the bag, and there's 26 tons of them. The
avocados go on your toast. That's how I order them. No, don't you know?
Yeah. Clearly, haven't been to a British truck stop, but anyway,
that's probably a Californian.
There is one or two truck stops where you could have an avocado on toast.
Let me tell you about the reality I see on the roads when I go on my cargo bike, dear Lorryist. I see.
Which roads are these again? Driving through Europe on your cargo bike?
Anyway.
Yes, the roads of Cambridge.
Cambridge is a little different from, anyway. But you're in a kind of, I wouldn't say mesmerized, because that would be a threat to road safety, but you're in a state where you're on your own, you've got the road coming at you, and it's a very different information gathering environment to sitting at a desk reading a book. Yeah. And it probably adds something to it. Certainly in some titles it adds something to it. So I've listened to Cervantes driving across Spain. That adds a whole new element to it. Yeah, that's
that's not a short book either.
That's not a short book. Well, and that's another thing, is you have an immense amount of time. This is part of the reason I'm back trucking. And we talked about this, Johan, that for different reasons, I was a marriage collapse, and I came back to the UK, and I needed to get work again. And I've been out of the country for a few years, and it was like, well, what should I do? And I couldn't get the same level of pay as I could as a driver. So I thought, well, let's go back driving, but let's use it. Let's use the time, if I'm going to get back on my feet and get going again. And having this experience in Honduras and having this experience with these very interesting people, it became quite clear that I didn't know so much. And I still don't know so much, but I really didn't know so much. And so if I was going to be back driving, I would spend the next few years learning. So this has been quite deliberate. And the type of work I've been doing has been deliberately doing it, if I can, in such a way that I have listening time.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows, only time? And who can say if your love grows as your heart shows, only time?
Well, in a way, I mean, you are paraphrasing Socrates here, that being the wisest man is the one who knows how little you know. No, like Socrates is deemed wise by the oracle in Delphi because he's the man who knows how little he knows. And in a way, I mean, it sounds like after Honduras, you can't really put the genie back into the bottle. So I mean, I might be overinterpreting this, but like it sounds like something had changed with regards to like I don't know.
I digested the red pill. Yeah, I changed. Yeah, I did it in the most difficult way possible. Some people read a blog. I went to the murder capital of the world. It's, you know. And then I did, and then for all of this, so I'm learning about libertarians when I'm there, and I keep seeing this Mencius mold bug, and I start reading it, and as most people are, I'm just horrified. When I can understand it, most of it I can't understand, and then when I do understand it, it's like, oh my god, what on earth is this guy saying? Because
he was on the Manifest podcast some time ago and accused me and Calais of being Himmlerites. He accused us of being Himmlerites.
Himmlerites. Yeah. Explain. Himmler was a Nazi.
No, sorry. We have to do let's do esoteric Nazis another podcast. So.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Johan's high-flying references coming back, biting him in the ass once again. What can I say? No, but you did start to talk about something you'd listened to, I think, while driving. I felt there was a book somewhere.
Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I interrupted myself. I was listening to The Sovereign Individual this last week. You're obviously aware of that. So obviously it's a fairly old book. And you could say, well, they were wrong about this, various different things, but then predictions are impossible. And I'm with the general premise. I totally agree. I think this system of states will fail. I think they will. Maybe if the best solution is they kind of fade away. So they would be replaced by new power structures. There was a quote I put on Twitter, and I can't remember it offhand, but it was where the writers of that book were saying that in before Westphalia, before the modern nation state, there were all kinds of different sovereignties. There was a Catholic Church, there was Islam, there were local principalities, there were the nobles, there were the interlocking and overlapping sovereignties in the way that we don't have now. Guilds, actually, this is something I've taken a bit of interest in recently. I think guilds are fascinating.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get back to guilds.
No one seems to talk about them, which is interesting in itself. But anyway, so I agree with that premise. And Johan, you probably know the A14 near Cambridge. I don't know.
You mean the road?
Yeah, the road. Yes, the big main road.
What about it?
And they changed it a couple of years back. I don't know how long you've been there, but the modern road, they went for a whole exercise of replacing it. There's a whole section up to Alconbury that they replaced. Most of the old road is still there, and you can drive over an overpass and you look down and you go, oh, that was the old road. And it was chaotic and it was terrible and it was always jammed up with traffic. I almost blocked it myself and I had a blowout on my truck. And you look down and you think, oh, I remember that. I remember when we had to use that. And I think that's what it's going to be like. I think that's if it goes well, that's what it's going to be like. Then we're going to look back and say, well, that was the United Kingdom, that was the United States, or that was Sweden. And I think some countries, lots of countries will retain solid sovereignty. Japan, I think, almost certainly will.
I mean, we can definitely go into both the verdict of what you see coming and also the problem. But I was wondering if basically, and your personal bit here, if you want to speak something to because I'm thinking of your post on rethinking ethnos, where you talked about exodus. So, like, essentially, how do you eventually end up embarking on some sort of exodus from what is now recognized as the previous order or the regime towards something? Like, do you understand what I'm because I'm trying to compress what you wrote there.
Okay, so I wasn't actually writing in terms of it of an exodus in that sense. I was more drawing that it was the people of Israel. And so if you had the people of England on an exodus, who would that be? And then you look at our multicultural society and you go, right, okay. Because if you were to, obviously it's, logistically impossible. But if you were to say everybody in England now is part of this band that's going to be landless and making our way through the wilderness, you're going to go, well, these guys and these guys and these guys and these guys
are not the same.
They so happen to be born here. They arrived here on a boat. They arrived here, their parents arrived here. And then you start, so obviously, this is dangerous ground where people start thinking about, hey, you're racist. But to deny ethnos is crazy. We've had it. We've always had it. People have always been in tribes. Tribes are wonderful. Tribes are fantastic. Everybody goes, oh, tribalism is so bad. Tribalism on Twitter is so terrible. Well, I don't think that's really tribalism. That's just fighting. That's war of all against all. That's not tribalism. No. Because tribes help each other out. They do things. They live together. They're part of a group that helps each other.
Yeah,
and
you're right. That's not the main impression from Twitter that people help each other.
No. So people go, "Oh, American politics is so tribal." No, it's not. You know, Republicans scattered across the country aren't helping each other, and Democrats they're just arguing about something, and they might come together, but. Real tribes in the past, and tribes in other parts of the world. You go to Africa or Honduras, and you will see tribes, and that's a good thing that they're in a tribe. You know, they get a lot from being in a tribe. Tribes are great. Tribes are gifts from God. That's what I was trying to say. Now. Then it becomes difficult because I'm not saying there should be pogroms and genocides and this kind of thing. And we are in this situation. We can't pretend that we're not living in the UK in 2023. We can't flip the switch and go back to 1955. And frankly, it's sometimes the right they almost had this mythical image of some parts of the past. One thing I find quite interesting about Bronze Age pervert is it's the mythical image he goes for. He's not saying we should be like that. We should be like that image. That's my takeaway from it. I think that's very interesting. But then again, the people who are saying, no, we want to retain our English communities, our Wessex communities, our East Anglian communities, our Kentish and Northern England communities, or Scottish or Irish, they've got a point. There's something to that. If I go to another country, if I'm in Kenya and I hear an English accent, I'm going to go and talk to that guy. We've got something in common. It is something real.
The Lorryist, I presume.
The Lorryist, yes. I presume. I'm going to be really lost if I end up lorrying in Africa. But anyway, yeah.
But that is sort of an impediment to our situations because we are. In a sense, we're stuck in modernity. We keep. Certain parts of the conservative movement can sort of be harken back to Enoch Powell and sort of the rivers of blood and that sort of rhetoric. In part, it's just nostalgia and it's cope and it's just in a sense also futility and aesthetics and it's only appealing to I guess a very small crowd, but also it's easy and it's sort of what it is to when there's nothing really to look forward to, you sort of harken back, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
No. I'm just sort of reacting to what Graham is saying, and because I think a lot of Europeans feel the same way in a sense, right? We sort of many of us are sort of were brought up in the sense in a state or sort of in a system where we sort of knew or could sort of predict where things were going, and only in a sense. Politics was easier because there were sort of a consensus around most things. Especially in Sweden, we probably world champions were world champions of consensus. But I think one of the problems is also, sort of being. We've always been told, it's only going to go. We have this sort of progressive view of history that whatever happens, will be ups and downs, but the trajectory will be up. It seems to be up. But only for a certain, subset of the nation. When you then look to, everything from wages to food prices to the promises that sort of were implicit in the political messaging from the 70s and onwards, sort of those promises haven't been delivered on, and sort of the regime has not changed, but the sort of messaging has morphed. And the promises sort of have been replaced with, I dare say, threats.
Yeah. On that note, I think this is a good segue from Calais' point about like how the regime responds to, say, cracks and how they try to like keep things together, but by doing so aggravate some of the problems. for example, by threats. And I'm thinking if this speaks to one of the points that you identified here, that is like demeritocracy. And
Right.
you mentioned earlier, like how from the driver's seat, in a way, you can see the economy in terms of how few other trucks are out on the roads, or how traffic slows down in a way.
It's less, yes.
Less. But another aspect here of like, I'm thinking with regards to tribes, or how the current political, I'm not sure if to call it elite, but like the graduate class or cognitive elites try to deal with, say, tensions with regards to, say, migration, that as a lorry driver you would be fined for not making not ensuring that any migrants sneak onto your truck, essentially.
Yeah,
So you would so if you want to speak to that point, because I found it quite telling that so if a migrant is found on your truck, you're fined, say, £10,000 as of this year.
Okay, so what it is yes, the fine can be £10,000. What happens, and this has happened, I didn't mention it in the article, but what has happened, because I do know drivers who have been caught with people in the back, and they get a lawyer, they go to court, the business gets a lawyer.
We're not talking about smugglers now. We're talking about people who have been negligent with regards to when someone can sneak onto it.
Okay, so here's a measure of it. So yeah, I won't go into the technical details, but we have to seal up the trucks. But they get incredibly inventive about how they smuggle themselves on. So there's this one driver, he was aiming to get to Dunkirk port, where you can park on the port securely. We got EU driver's hours rules, of course. He got stuck in very heavy traffic on the autoroute coming up to Dunkirk, and he had to stop for his legal hours. And he found the quiet road on an industrial estate near Dunkirk and felt it was safe. And he woke up in the morning, he checked his load, but he didn't climb up and look along the load. And what had happened is migrants had, clearly people outside working as a team, they had cut the cords and the seals, they had glued them back together and then closed the doors. The migrants had climbed up, and there were voids in the load. So there was just a couple of spaces where there wasn't part of the load, and they had put themselves in that space, and he hadn't climbed up on the back. If he had climbed in, which is what I was, but then the guy was in his 60s as well. He didn't, you might say he didn't check thoroughly enough, but he did check. There were, I think, 8 on board, and this was when the fine was £2,000 maximum. He was, I don't think they got to the UK. I think the border force caught them in Calais, or Dunkirk rather, because the search dogs go around the trucks the British search dogs go around the trucks in the French ports. But he was caught with them on his truck. They gave him a fine of £2,000 per migrant, £16,000, 8. Okay, he had to get a lawyer, and the company paid for his lawyer because they were about to be fined as well, reduced the fine. So it was still several £100s, which he had to pay as a working man. It's not a small amount of money. And it's an incredible amount of hassle paying for the lawyer for everybody involved for something that he didn't do. And this was my point. In the law, it says the responsible person can get a fine of now up to £10,000. But then if I go and hide in your car, okay, you get in your car and drive away, who is the responsible person in that scenario?
Yeah,
it's me. You know, and the whole, I found it outrageous. And I can't understand. This was some time ago as well, because these fines have been in place. Well, I don't remember exactly how long, but for a while, a few years. It directly shifts responsibility on to the guy who's actually a victim of something. He's a victim of hijacking, in a way.
Apart from like getting the fine, like doing all the routines that you described to avoid or ensuring that you do not have any migrants in your truck, then would require essentially driving non-stop and like not getting out for hours and hours and hours.
All of these kind of tricks that so this was actually my point.
So can I ask you, Graham, like, have you ever in your work done come across people who tried to hide in your truck?
Yeah, a few times, yeah. So these weren't people who broke the seals and got into the trailer. They got onto the outside. Incredibly dangerous what they do. I've seen what they did. This happened. This almost always happens in Calais or nearby Calais. It can also happen in the town of Ouistreham, which is near Caen. There's the port of Caen. You have to drive through a town, and that's actually very risky because it's through the town, so you have to stop at traffic lights. With Calais and Dunkirk, it's straight off the autoroute into the port. So in theory, it should be okay. But what happens is these several big truck stops near Calais, fuel pumps and workshops and big trucking area, basically. And of course, the migrants know there's lots of trucks. What they will do is they will jump on between the cab and the unit, which is incredibly dangerous. If they slip, they go under the back wheels, they die. I've seen that as well. Okay, Bulgarian truck. I didn't see it happen, but a Bulgarian truck had run over some young Somali guy. So there's fatalities. There's been drivers killed as well when migrants had tried to break onto trucks and the driver confronts them and the driver gets stabbed. That's happened as well. What happened to me, and it's happened to everybody at some point, is when you leave these big truck stops, which are very secure, they got razor wire, guard dogs, cameras everywhere, motion sensors. The truck stops are secure. As soon as you get outside onto the road, that's when they try and jump on. They will sprint and try to jump on, as particularly when you're going around one of the roundabouts inside the complex, which is when the cab is, you can't see them in your mirrors getting on because of where the cab moves. And that's what's happened twice. If you're coming out, the way that's laid out, you can either get onto the autoroute and turn left towards Belgium or right towards the UK. Okay. If you turn left, you go, or even if you just go past the right turn, and this has happened a couple of times, they bang on the back of the cab to say, let me off. Some of the drivers just carry on with the guy on the back. It's like, screw you, I'm going to take you to Belgium, whatever. Yeah. But I will stop, and this is the reason why, because another time it happened, and it happened in broad daylight, literally in front of the police. There was a CRS van in the complex, as there always is, because the French have got to police this. There's an immense amount of policing time goes into this. It's basically what they've been doing for 10 years. The CRS in that area, that's what they do. They catch migrants trying to get onto lorries.
And CRS are basically riot police, right? Or rather, yeah. Yeah,
they're heavy duty police in big vans. Anyway, so he jumps on my truck. I didn't see him. It's an icy road, so I'm, having to think about not sliding the lorry around because I've got to drive, all this, and they jump. He must have jumped on virtually in front of the police. Then the police see him. I didn't see it. The police see him almost immediately. And as I come around the roundabout, I turn right. He comes around the front of the police van, comes around the front. As soon as he puts the siren on, this lad gets off. Now I'm moving. So to stop me, he must have had a knife on and he cut through the red airline from the trailer to the trailer, from the cab to the trailer, which locks the brakes on. And they know that. It's been known that they will pull the red airline out when they're on there if they want the truck to stop. So he literally cut through the red airline. And I've got a video. I should put it on Twitter or something where you can. I'm swearing, F this. What's going on with my truck? I'm just stopping. And then you see this lad run, and you can hear the air hissing out of the brake line. And I made that story far too long. But then I had the problem. The CRS were there, but then they had to go. I had to repair the airline, and there was a workshop next door. So what I eventually did was, it was better rather than call someone to actually go and buy one myself and fit it myself. But I'm fitting an airline with these boys crowding around me trying to get on my truck.
And this is sort of.
But this is the problem. This is what they don't. It's not a game. It's a game for the people doing it. It's not a game for it's not something easy to do to secure the truck. I mean, okay, so I'm stopped in a lay-by in France or Italy or Spain, and I search my truck at 4:00 in the morning in the dark in an empty parking area, and I find 5 guys with knives who don't want to be found. What happened? I'm on my own. And this is the problem I've got with it. Is we've all got with it. Is why are truck drivers and everybody apart from Border Force and the Royal Navy responsible for securing England's border? It's not our job. you know.
No, but sort of larger picture is always, these sort of issues are always decided on a sort of larger political scale, and you have these governments saying, and you have obviously the story in the media is, we'll have you on and you tell your story, but in the media it'll always be, I mean, these people are desperate, these people, and obviously that's true, but why are they desperate? I mean, and why are they even there in the first place? And it's because of these, and it's because of laxity, one, but two, I mean, we've sort of created this sort of pull force. We've sort of told everyone, come here and we'll take care of you, and there's massive rewards if you step over this line in the channel, or we're sort of in the same boat, so to speak. In Sweden, we have to swim to get here in some sense, if you're not walking across Lapland and Finland, which you're not. So you're getting here, or however you're getting here, but once you cross this imaginary line, sort of is an imaginary in a sense, right, you get all these sort of protections. Why wouldn't you? Well, if that's the case, and we all sort of agreed this is a problem, why is this a huge deal to sort of confront? Well, it's a huge deal to confront because you have all these people who say, well, these people are washing up in the Mediterranean, that we should take care of them. And we've been saying it for 30 years. I mean, and we've all these people who, and it sort of ties into, in my view, I think none of us would protest this view. A lot of people with a lot of power and money say, well, why can't you let them in? You're being boorish, you're being racist, you're being, ugly, white, working, whatever people. Yeah. You should just accept that, these people have had, they haven't had a fair shake of it. Why shouldn't they come to and compete for jobs and compete for pensions and whatnot in the same place? And this is a sort of, political situation we've been living with for 20 years. And I think it's only being sort of, I mean, the effects are being, especially in Sweden, but the UK as well, we sort of realize the problems now. But I mean, in a sense, it's too late to change. But also the narrative will never change, because the largest megaphones are on the side of the people who say, well, guys, you have to have sympathy. I mean, it is shocking, but that only means we should be, building an even, grander highway to them to skip over the Mediterranean and all the sort of, truck stops or whatnot. Just give them straight in.
I would say the full-on, black and white racists and what I'd call the immigration fundamentalists actually have a very similar view of the migrants. They don't treat them as fully human. Okay, so we all know why a full-on racist won't treat someone as fully human. He thinks he's lesser. But the reason why the lefty, wokist, immigration fundamentalists don't is because they just think they're all just wonderful. They don't treat them as fallible human beings who will do bad and silly things sometimes, and some people don't do bad and silly things. Some people are deserving and some people aren't. It's a mixture. There's thousands of them and they're different. Okay, and the kids, and they are kids for the most part, who are trying to jump on trucks in Calais, okay, are young, brave, adventurous young men who are trying to eke out a better life, but they are also trying to take that better life if they can take it, which you can understand, but you need to understand that. That's not a valid reason to be jumping on lorries. And that's this is, just go off on a tangent slightly here, but there's this incredible narrative where they wouldn't take the risks unless they were desperate. When I was 19 years old, I go out on my motorbike to take risks for fun. I'm with these guys in Calais when I'm trying to fight them off, and they're young guys and they're laughing. It's a joke. It's a fun. It's a chase. It's the thrill of the chase. They're young men who are enjoying the danger of jumping on a moving lorry. And the plus is they can get to the other side of the channel and get free everything. They're human beings. Of course, they're going to be like that. That's what young men are like. Yeah. And they are coming from a different culture. They are coming from a culture where perhaps life is cheaper. their lives and their buddies' lives and the lives of the truck drivers.
But I mean, but there was no problem understanding this, Graham, when we were talking about, I mean, working class culture in England, for instance, in the 70s and 80s, and you had a lot of problems with hooliganism in the stands, and you had lager louts, and you had this sort of, I mean, those were sort of quote unquote cultural problems, right? When you had, the elites sort of told people, well, you're not behaving. You should behave. You should know your place. You shouldn't be doing this. And that's the sense where ideology comes into this, right? Because when you don't have sort of an indigenous white working class, you can sort of be patronizing against. You have to say these people are, I mean, noble savages, to use the sort of intellectual term, right? These people are sort of, they're not really modern humans in the sense that, they have agency. Of course, they're going to be, this energetic, wild, uncontrollable force. But, you have really to just let it happen. And we had. And that's what's sort of also, I mean, naive, but also, in a sense, racist. Yeah, because racist. You are treating these people like not like human beings.
Sorry to interject here, Calvin Graham, but I think apart from these aspects of how how you show contempt towards the concerns or the actual work situation that you described, Graham, I think what is telling about your example here is more to the point of how demeritocratic the people making these rules are, in the sense that fining the truckers shows in a way like the incompetence of understanding their own policies, like how this could in any way make sense. I think that is an aspect here that is worth more. Like, I think we should address that part, like that you have, in a sense, a group of people who do not understand what they are governing or how they would go about implementing it. And in a way, maybe it's relevant for us to address like the distance between essentially the work that you're doing and the people enacting these policies, what they are doing.
To put it crudely,
because I mean, it's more than contempt; it's idiocy as well.
Yes. Well, I think they merely take the path of least resistance. Okay. Or to put it very crudely, they screw who they can screw, and they won't screw who they can't. Okay. So they can't get £10,000 out of some kid who's just jumped on a lorry and rocked up on the shores and has lost his passport. There's no ID. Okay. And there might actually be some political points for helping him. But a truck driver whose license matches his address, he's been working for years, paying taxes for years, who's fully established, easy to trace. I mean, we literally tracked by satellite, not necessarily by the government, but it's always time. It's easy to. That's who you're going to screw because you can. I think they're in such a mess that that's what they're doing. It's because we have to do something about it. They know it's bad politically. They know it's bad politically either way. Actually, they know there's going to be all the bleeding heart, Islington, Cambridge people who are going to be, oh no, you must protect the poor little knife wielding migrants, and you're also going to piss off working people who are having to deal with it. Okay, so they're going to piss off someone, so they're going to piss off the person they can get money from. That's my view, and I know that sounds very brutal, but I think they're in such a mess. I think if you go on and watch TV shows like The Thick of It, have you ever seen that comedy?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's how they behave. I think that is very close to being true. They don't have time to think and do wise things. They can't manage. They don't have time to manage, and it's not breeding the people who want to manage. It's breeding the people who want to win the popularity contests. And when they're in, and when they've actually got the reins of power, they're not a rider. It's like it's someone getting on a wild bronco and not knowing how to ride a horse. They're like, what do we do with this? We do something. What can we do? We can find truck drivers. That's what we're going to do. And that's what I think it is.
And also it's a question of constituency, right? Because the media is a larger constituency than truck drivers.
Yes.
I mean, and the working.
You'd hopefully you think, well, the media might be broadcasting to truck drivers, but they seem to have forgotten that.
But once upon a time, and we all know this, I mean, people in the media used to know truck drivers because they lived next to them. I mean, not everyone in the media was not upper middle class or trying to be. There were actually working people in the media. I mean, once upon a time. And people, obviously, Graham, you're a great example of this. I mean, the working person has sort of, you have to do it yourself, in a sense. You have to self-publish. In a sense, you're part of the media, not being, the mainstream one. But I mean, this is sort of one of the main problems, I feel, one of constituency, because politics now are catered either to, well, mostly to, I'd say, media and the sort of narratives and sort of elite interest. And if you're very wealthy or you're a bank, I mean, special regulation, it can happen for you. But I mean, if you're not that sort of moneyed professional class, and it's interesting because I feel in Sweden we have a similar situation in the sense, I mean, the UK and the legislation has gone so off the reservation in the sense of speech laws and whatnot. I mean, I'm not qualified to comment in the sense because I'm only reading the headlines.
Oh, you mean you're not Anglo-Saxon enough?
No.
Or is it Normand enough? Which are you, populist or aristocrat? Which is it, Kalle?
I'd like to quote the brilliant movie, The Gladiator, which I'm really sad to hear. I heard is being there is a sequel being made, which is tells you the story of modern cinema in a nutshell. But we have a senator, I think his name is Gracchus or something. He says, "I don't pretend to be a man of the people, but I try to be a man for the people," and it's probably the best one could do in my circumstance.
Good enough for Trump.
I really feel, the problem here is, people don't care anymore. As long as you have a nice TV, nobody's banging down your door. We've had an explosion of violence in Sweden now. We want one of the, deadly shootings. I think we have pretty much the record numbers in at least Western Europe. I mean, maybe some Balkan country can sort of measure up to us, but I wouldn't be sure about it.
Or Honduras.
Or I actually think Honduras is safer now, and El Salvador
I cannot
probably
believe
is
I've
on the
just
same
listened
scale.
to two Swedes. Two Swedes compare their own country to Honduras. Oh, how the world has changed!
Exactly. But I mean, I mean, Honduras is obviously in jest in a sense, but it's black comedy, not real comedy, because it's sort of true. But I think what most people said 10 years ago was, at least in Sweden, there will be a popular outcry, there will be some things, politics will change, yada yada will happen, and we've seen nothing. Only the weakest sentiments and the sort of weakest inklings of doing anything from politics. And why is this? It's because politics doesn't work for the regular citizen anymore. I mean, it's just not calibrated for it.
I mean, we've had our own rebellion here with Brexit. It took years to happen. They haven't taken advantage of it, basically, and they're still trying to wriggle out of it. And they might do. So we're now getting to the autocratic stage of this regime. I think we're getting to the point where their democracy is, they'll give it lip service, but they're basically going to do what they want to do. And I think AA, Academic Agent, is right when he says the crunch will come when they need to use force. Will they have the cojones really to start shooting British or Swedish or American citizens? I know that sounds extreme. Well, maybe not in America.
No, I don't think it's extreme, but more to, like, would you say cojones? Like, it sounds more like, do you even have the grunts on your side?
Have the what? Sorry?
Whom?
The grunts.
Does whom?
Oh, will the police and the military pull the trigger kind of thing?
Yeah, or like if you have logistics aspects of this as well, like, do you even want, like, how do you build? Because in a way, like, I buy most of the critique that both you and Kalle have been leveling for the past few minutes, but I mean, in a way, it's, if things
you want trying to sound more reasonable than me and Graham is.
I don't think I sound unreasonable at all.
I'm trying to be the centrist here, but I'm trying to bypass some of they're not listening, their moral is bad, to basically things are falling apart at the rate where it's actually more relevant to talk about what kind of alternative project can attract people who knows how to build, mend, and fix stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I know what you're saying. I mean, obviously, our police force seem here in the UK. There's a big thing that's been happening in the last couple of days with the arrest of this autistic girl.
Yeah. Can you unpack that for us poor Swedes who don't read UK media? The BBC has been exorcised from me. I've had it cast out. Right. So my understanding was it was an incident in Leeds, the city of Leeds, fairly large city, which is West Yorkshire police area. A family. My understanding, though, I'm very careful what I say because or just take what I say with a pinch of salt with the fine details. But a family thought their daughter, who was only 16 years old, had autism and various health problems, had gone out drinking. I don't know if she was in the city centre or nearby in whichever area Leeds it was, but they were concerned about her, and they did the right thing. They called the police, or someone called the police, and the police found this girl as a vulnerable teenager who's inebriated. She'd been drinking, and they brought her home. My understanding was as they were taking this girl into the home, and I don't know what she might have been a right pain to the police. It's quite possible, 16-year-old with drink. It's possible. She said to one of the female police officers, "You look like my gay nana." Nana being grandmother. This is simple, and that's where it started. And this WPC, this female police officer, then said, "We're going to arrest you for a homophobic comment." That's fantastic.
But she was only 16 years old.
She was only
16 years
They're
old.
only supposed to blow the bloody doors
The
off.
doors off.
So you're losing me, guys.
No, Michael Caine. This is the best Cockney sort of accent we can muster over here.
That's not Michael Caine.
Broadsheet journalists have described my impressions as stunningly accurate.
Well, they're wrong. I've not heard your Michael Caine, but I assume it would be something along the lines of, "My name's Michael Caine."
That is where you are so wrong. And you can look at my live video for proof, because that's the very thing I don't do. I say that he used to talk like that.
Do you, Michael Caine? Okay.
Right, for both of you, your Cockney licence is revoked from here on in. Sorry. No, both hopeless, not even worthy of Hollywood. Any more of this, I'll treat it as a microaggression. But anyway, so the coppers, they get cops or coppers. They take her in her home, and at that point, she says this homophobic slur, which is "You look like my lesbian nana." Apparently, her nana was a lesbian, and she'd just been saying, "Well, you look like my nana." I've just put a poll on Twitter saying, "What's more insulting, to be called a lesbian if you're a woman? What's more insulting, to be called a lesbian?" And there's lesbians on the front of Vogue magazine. I'm not sure the issue there. Or a grandmother. No. The offence is that to be called a lesbian is a homophobic slur. And then she was arrested. She was handled very roughly by 7 police officers, put in a car, taken to the police station, interviewed, and taken home again, which all of that seems completely pointless. The police are saying, and they've got statements saying there's more to it. They've got body cam footage where there's other things going on, possibly. But everybody's saying it's excessive. And then we got what's his name? He goes on the Lotus Eaters quite often. He's ex-British police officer who started an organisation called Fair Cop when he himself was targeted because of a bad tweet, which he thought was ridiculous. And so he goes out. He's now basically got an NGO, effectively.
Oh, you mean, Harry Miller?
Yes, Harry Miller. Thank you very much. Yeah, of course. And he's come out very strong against this and is saying basically West York's police are behaving like a gang and enforcing the will of the...
It would be fun if he said if they acted gay.
Well, this is the thing. You look like my gay nana. If you are gay, why is that a problem? What are they saying? I don't get it. Why is it a slur to simply point out that someone looks a lesbian if being a lesbian is okay?
Sounds to me the woman police officer is homophobic. I mean, that's the only explanation that sort of makes logical sense to me.
Self-loathing. Fear and loathing in West Yorkshire.
Fear and self-loathing in West Yorkshire.
Fear and self-loathing in West Yorkshire.
Yeah.
But this is the only stories we're sort of getting our UK policing sort of actually quote unquote working nowadays. You know, arresting people for tweets or slight implied homophobia is the sort of standard we're going for, I guess.
Yeah.
I haven't had any personal interactions, and I'm on Twitter. I've done some occasionally spicy little things. I tried to be ambiguous, but it's all things that could be seen that way. Certainly enforcement of minor crimes has been very bad in the last few years. I believe the incident with Harry Miller and the guy with the tweet of the swastika pride flag. Do you remember this, Johan? After he stood up to Hampshire Police, the PCC, which is a police commissioner, I can't remember the exact title, but the commissioner for that area said, well, basically, no, we're not going to attend any more incidents about tweets and social media posts. We're actually going to attend burglaries and things. And a few police forces, I think,
a radical proposition.
A radical proposition investigating crime.
Yeah, seems like somebody hasn't gone to university, or rather a prestigious one. Maybe, probably should be re-educated somehow.
Maybe the opposite. In that it's now they only recruit graduates into the police now. This is a whole different topic of the graduatization of everything. And both of you guys are academics, but this whole thing whereby almost every profession now, they need graduate. Nursing as well as another one where they feel they need to only have graduates in. So I think Elon Musk would be out because he dropped out, didn't he? So he couldn't join the British police. But well, he's also not British. But this is a big disconnect with the police where they're. I can't. There's better people who talk about this. Morgoth. You heard of this guy Morgoth in the north of England? He's got a YouTube channel. He did a great video. About
this sounds like an extra character in Tolkien's universe. Morgoth.
Oh, he is an extra character.
He's a character. I think that's his screen name. Yeah, he's one of the dissident right crowd.
Sorry, can I make a quick comment here? Because in a way, it comes back to like the earlier tangent we had about your reading being done on like audio-wise while driving a truck. Is that I think this is also why it's even so hard for the graduate class to even comprehend what is happening, because these are autodidactic stories of like, or people of stories about autodidactism entering into actually the same sphere of ideas, but because there is no adherence to the formal graduate system, then you could easily combine reflection or experience of what it's like meeting these migrants in your truck with while listening to a book about the Westphalian system, that everything gets put together and then you see what makes sense without necessarily knowing what is right or what is wrong. And then you end up with names like Morgoth and the Lorryist instead of like E.P.P. Thompson, like esteemed professor is going to talk about his esteemed theory.
Well, I mean, you know about the theory of the overproduction of the elites, and it's something Yarvin as well, of course, is very much agreeing with. And I don't want to be rude because I know both of you are very learned men.
We don't drive a lorry, is what you're getting to.
No, I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say it's just too much. In 1999, Tony Blair decided that 50% of school leavers should go to university. Yep. And it never actually quite panned out like that. I think it's more like 41% as of last year of school leavers. But you can't have 41% of the population in the elite.
No.
Why are you just pumping people through academia when for the vast majority of them will not need it? And it will actually hold them back from doing other things. And it also, I think it's a very cathedral way, this idea of a cathedral.
But it's very progressive in that sense, because we had the same idea in Sweden. Although I think the people in Sweden also had the sort of, and I guess New Labour had the same thought. It's good for unemployment figures. Shockingly, people. But the perverse thing in parts of the UK system, but also the US system, is there's also a rather significant amount of debt being endured by these people. Told to go to university systems and not being able to use their degrees in a sensible way. And it's the Swedish system is perverse in other ways, but I guess this is one where the Anglo sort of version of this is even more sinister in that sense. Yeah. But yes, it is true. I mean, obviously, the overproduction of elites sort of has led to people starting a podcast just to harangue their own ideas and not having any better work to do. In the evening. Now we have the privilege of having you to here to discuss issues with us.
This is great because when the counter-revolution comes, we can say some of our best friends are truck drivers.
Yeah, and that is the only reason why we're doing this, surely, because it's not, it's not. That's the only sort of sensible motive we can ever have, and that's what I'm telling my wife after we're done with this recording. But fascinating, and I find it. I mean, and it's also tied to that very ideology sense of everything, because I mean. 12 years ago when I think me and you were in the university systems, we sort of have an inkling where things were going. But I think none of us would have ever sort of imagined sort of a scale of ideology we now see in the university system and the results sort of from the bottom up of sort of, and this is a thing we should come back to, by the way, important or sort of essential jobs and the sort of bullshit jobs. I think you've referenced that book once or twice, Graham, in your blog, which is very much sort of the if not high priest, then either lay priest class of cathedral workers, right? And that is fascinating.
Brahmin is a good phrase as well. Sure,
Brahmin is a good, but it's a case. I mean, case system is we're only 1 or 2 generations away from it, surely, in the West. And sort of now we only have to sort of get a hold of some new set of Nuremberg laws to sort of parse out who's more Brahmin than the other one. But surely we're doing that.
But I wonder if also, sorry, Graham, go ahead.
No, I was going to go back to what Johan's saying. But then you can leave a competency gap in society of good police officers, perhaps, and truck drivers. There's been a narrative about a truck driver shortage for some time now. Mm-hmm. And this is something that constantly comes up, is we can't get enough truck drivers. Every now and again we get a headline. There was panics in 2021 when there a rumour got around UK that some petrol stations weren't getting fuel because there weren't enough drivers to bring fuel to the petrol stations. People, there was panic buying. And of course, then that caused the problem that everybody wanted to avoid. But it was actually a bit of a storm in a teacup. But there's always these things where we don't have enough skilled labour. So you've got, on one hand, we've got, let's send 50% of people to university and then we don't have a plumber. We don't have people to work in restaurants. There was a shortage of people of waiters and waitresses. Shortage. And that's a whole other thing, because in a free market, there shouldn't be shortages of anyone. But all of this, it is an ideology to pump free people through to university. Yes, to get them off of the job market for 3 years, to cut unemployment. Yes, you are breeding ideological drones who might vote your way. There's that aspect to it.
Also, maybe a view of a person, the sort of blank slate idea of if you only have an education, you could be, upper middle class. Why couldn't you? I mean, let's create that sort of state of mind.
That's the point. But we can't all be upper middle class.
No, exactly.
It's the society. We need everybody in society to be doing a function and been doing something and making everything work. And it's probably better if they're happier doing it. And rather than they're basically creating people for Graeber's bullshit jobs. And yes, I love that book. It's fantastic. And even though it's a little bit schadenfreude, because I know I don't have one, bullshit job that is. But you're getting people and putting for 3 years to do something they may not ever use or may actually be bad at. I've got a nice little anecdote about this. Like I volunteer on summer festivals, music festivals. Okay, and was part of the security team. This is when I was in the Territorial Army, and we had this young guy. He came to us, and he was a volunteer. We all volunteered, and he had a degree in disaster management. And I was like, "What? This is fantastic! We got this incredibly well qualified young man who will be incredibly useful if we have a disaster." And it just so happened the East Midlands, where we were, was hit by the worst summer storm for generations. And we had this campsite with thousands of teenagers in tents that were getting flooded out. We had a disaster.
Lucky you.
No.
A perfect laboratory for an experiment.
Well, yeah. Well, if only if it proves this point. And the people did step up. They were surprising. The whole site ended up being run by an IT manager who suddenly discovered a latent ability to manage a crisis. But this young man with this degree sat in the corner of the ops room going, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I have no idea." And it's just a little anecdote to say that it doesn't. You can't teach everything just by sitting them in a classroom and killing them with PowerPoint.
But it's back to our starting point about this. I mean, amateurs talk about strategy and professionals about logistics.
Well, you could talk about disaster management, I'm sure. But I know, yes, I see what you mean. It's been doing logistics. Yes, it needs to be done and it needs to have people with that kind of hands-on ability. But it's been a huge wave.
But it also harkens back to like a point I think we've been circling around a few times. Like, I mean, in America and I guess everywhere now, there's a sort of, I wouldn't say nostalgia, I wouldn't say like a huge appraisal of, but there's a subculture maybe of right-wing culture that sort of very much aggrandizes and sort of the sort of handyman of yore or the sort of manly man of yore that could, take care of hearth and home and sort of fix things, if for lack of a better word. But also, that goes hand in hand with the sort of romantic notion of the prepper and the sort of disaster, sort of one man against the sort of coming collapse. Yes. A notion I find romantic and sort of disingenuous in a sense, because like if the collapse comes, when it comes, I mean, one man will be nothing. You need tribe. But I think the sort of traits perspective on this is really interesting, because what we need in a sense and always will need is the sort of person that we're desperately trying to replace with technology. And you had this brilliant post, and I think it was one of the best things I've ever read on the topic, because I've sort of been interested in a sort of doomer sense in the sort of oncoming onslaught of AI and self-driving cars and whatnot. And I think your post on self-driving trucks, or the sort of premise of a self-driving truck, was very thoughtful, because as a person who doesn't do lorry driving for work, or I've sat in one once. I drove in the Scania plant once, and it was.
It's a Scania plant. I want to talk about that. Forget everything else. No, I just want to hear about Scania. Sorry, carry on.
But really, the only thing you sort of know is that there's a lot of sensors, and you can sort of. If I think many people saw the Jean-Claude Van Damme doing the split on the lorries just to just to sort of get everyone on board with the self sort of stabilizing and the advanced technology that goes into that, and a lot of people are, myself included, I guess we've sort of seen it happening in front of our eyes, really, the sort of self-driving Teslas and whatnot, and we sort of. The natural step would be, this self-driving lorry, and that we sort of get away from this sort of dirty menial work of yesterday, sort of smacks of the 20th century and almost feudalism, right? And the sort of obviously everyone should be, be going to university and having, a nice degree and waking up to an avocado toast every morning. So that was a good reality check. And I sort of want to come back to that, the fact that we will need people with actual skills for a long, long time and might even survive a coming collapse or two, one might add.
Well, about the self-driving trucks, I like Peter Thiel talks about this in his book about AI and it taking jobs and how much AI is really good in where it supplements people. But people are wonderful. People are infinitely adaptable and creative and can get around things and will find, particularly people who have got the mindset of the right people. You can put them in all sorts of situations that the programmers can't envision. And when it comes to things like self-driving trucks, the question isn't so much, can you get a computer to drive a truck? Yes, you can. Okay. Is there a good reason to take a human being out? Well, that's a very different answer, because there's always going to be little things that a human being is going to pick up that basically you'd have to recreate another human, body and mind and soul, to be able to do that. I mean, the silly examples I put in, no, not silly, but the example I put in that piece, where what if you have a nail that's in a tire? You have a bit of metal. This has happened to me many times. You inspect your truck, you find a piece of metal sticking out of the tire. It hasn't punctured, it hasn't deflated. Any sensor wouldn't have picked it up.
Essentially, problems that requires some form of human judgment, which a system has a hard time picking up on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, or simply can't see. So it's going to be a long time before all of this is part of the fact that people don't understand these jobs. They don't know actually what goes into driving a truck. They drive a car and it's just the same. It's just bigger, and that's what I think it is. So it's a kind of naive. It's a kind of ignorant naivety.
And also, Graham, I think you mentioned also sort of wishing them away in a sense.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is something, and it's. I'm trying to put my finger on why people do have quite a lot of bigotry directed to working people in their own country, even skilled working people. They kind of don't want them to be there. And sometimes I think the whole immigration is, you know what? It might be a similar psychology to wanting slaves.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a similar kind of thing where I'm part of the elite. I'm special. Therefore, people should be doing things for me, and I shouldn't have to think about it. Okay, and I shouldn't have to regard them. I shouldn't have to regard these people. And sometimes I think the whole immigration thing, let's get people. You can treat people more like drones if they don't speak your language. They've come from another place, which is poor. We're doing them such a favour by giving them, these low-paying jobs, and they're going to come and serve our coffee and drive our trucks and empty our bins for us. And it's elitist attitude, which is akin to having servants. Yeah. It's the same kind of. It's nice. It's a nice feeling if you're in charge and you have someone doing. I can imagine that. It's hasn't really happened to me in my life, but where you waited on hand, you go to an expensive hotel. I went to the Philippines recently, and it's just lovely. Someone as you're checking in, a young lady, very nicely dressed, smiling, comes up to you with a tray with a glass of orange juice, and you feel special because you're being served. And so we've got this overproduction of elites that has partly come out of this ideology of pump everyone through university, who just want a servant class who don't make any noise, aren't paid too much, out of sight and out of mind, and don't vote for Brexit. That's what they want. That's how it seems to be. I don't know what you think about that, or maybe
I think it's really interesting because Sweden's has been one of the societies, I think, in Europe, if not the world, has been the sort of consensus has been that unions should be in charge of most of sort of the standard practices of labor practices in Sweden. And the sort of main I guess Teamsters union, which is obviously semi-state control in the fact that they're a part of the largest social democratic party here.
Sorry, this is a Teamsters union in Sweden.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then I don't know much about Sweden.
And the interesting fact is, the largest, I think, change that's happened in the last 10 years is apart from massive illegal and also economic migration, is the fact that many of these people, mainly from Bangladesh, which is interesting in itself, have ended up. And if I look outside my window here, we'll see a hub for food transport. People going everywhere with small packages of not only restaurant food, but basically groceries.
Yeah.
And they had to be sort of incorporated into the main Teamsters union, which is interestingly perverse because the Teamsters union has obviously lobbied for their members not to be, sort of. They shouldn't have to compete with the sort of prices that migrant labor from Bangladesh can sort of generate.
Put up with.
Yeah, and sort of they haven't lost the political argument, interestingly enough, but they sort of lost the technological one, which was the app economy sort of happened, and the gig economy sort of happened, and now you don't have taxi drivers in that sense anymore. You don't have, that it's sort of, yes, it's augmented the sort of market of logistics in Sweden, but that's the interesting fact. 10 years ago, you couldn't get a food delivery anywhere in the middle of Stockholm in 5 minutes. Now you can, and that's a class issue in my view. I mean, people in the countryside don't have this sort of excess pool of labor just waiting to give you a packet of food for £2 or something.
Because I mean, in a way, Calais, what you're describing is a general problem of labor arbitrage. It sounds like it.
Yeah, no, but it's just the fact of I think we're just the extremity of Europe and the Western world. I mean, it's like this everywhere now. I mean, it's just a fact of living in the Western world that we have sort of serfs who are not included in a social contract.
I think there will be an elite and they will have a servant class that serves them. Okay, I think the problem isn't so much having a servant class.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, this is what I'm. Because basically, I want us to transition now towards, like, in a way, what you started out with discussing, the guild.
Guilds.
Yeah, guilds.
Guilds, right. Oh, right. Well, just to complete that thought, is that the what I'm basically saying is you have a whole cohort of people who believe they are in the elite, but they aren't. And various political figures need to keep them happy. And that, I think that's the situation we find ourselves in. It's not because we have an elite. There will be an elite, and they will have people like me as a servant class driving their limousines, but it will only be a few percent of the population, not 20, 30, 40%.
But let's go into this, because I mean, essentially here we're shifting over to, we discussed like the problems here, but in a way, what are the possible other projects that are coming out of the issues we're seeing now with regards to sustaining the system, and also the conflicts that you are generating as part of this, or like the existing elite is generating new conflicts as part of not understanding how to govern it at this point.
Right.
And you're pointing now to another kind of elite, or there is some sort of elite. Like, can you flesh that out? What is it you see from, I guess, your own preferences, but also what you think is possible in the years to come?
Well, obviously, I do subscribe to this idea of the rotation of elites. I think.
Can you walk us through that?
Well, as far as I know, I haven't read it's Michel's, isn't it? So I haven't read him directly. I've read people like AA, but basically there will be power players. There will be a system of power, and it will rotate out. It will finish. It will end. Okay, and it will be the people who are part of that system of power will be replaced by a new system of power. And I think we can actually see it happening in real time. This is my personal opinion now, in where you look at what's happening with the Silicon Valley guys. They are literally getting more muscular. You've got this amazing thing where you've got Zuckerberg and Musk are going to have a fight in the Colosseum in Rome. And clearly that's a statement. They're saying something. Neither of them are going to lose. I hope Musk wins the fight. But in terms of it, if it happens, okay, they're almost putting a marker down and saying, especially in that they're both from the United States, and Congress and even the president of the United States are octogenarians and basically have one foot in the grave. You know, they're barely able to stand up, and these two guys are going to physically fight. You know, that's a powerful statement of, hello, we've arrived. After talking all about, you know, the past and conservatism and looking back to what was good, I'm very interested in some of the ideas that are popping out of Silicon Valley.
You basically want to see this fight, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm
not saying that. I mean, I'm not trying to like make a joke. I'm actually talking about the new focus of politics. That this is becoming more like, if you can offer an arena, then you will have my attention, and my attention is the new economy.
Yes, and things like, but obviously that's a PR thing. But things like Bitcoin and crypto are a real thing. In fact, in some ways, you could argue they're much more real than the fiat currencies we have now. And sovereignty has been stretched by things moving across borders, and that's been going on for a long time. Probably the steam engine was the first you know, technological thing that was going to be a threat to the sovereign state. I like using sovereign state rather than nation state because I can't get my head around. I'm in Britain. We got 4 nations. We got one state, but I think the sovereignty has been pushed, and this is the thesis behind the sovereign individual and other books, by other types of sovereignty. And obviously, the sovereign individual talks about individual sovereignty. But the shift to cryptocurrency for some people is a shift away from national sovereignties and national currencies. Has to be. Okay. I think, have you heard of Balaji Srinivasan?
No.
I have not.
This is a Silicon Valley guy. They're all billionaires, aren't they? They're all younger than me and billionaires, but never mind. But he's an investor. You listen to these guys, and I don't wish to be rude, but they do sound somewhat autistic. They also sound incredibly clever. You know, the way they think about it, the extent that they read. And of course, Curtis Yarvin is related. You know, he knows these guys. He talks to them. So they're getting influences from, you know, all sorts of different places. Some very interesting reads out there, very interesting people to listen to. You can listen to Mark Andreessen talk to Michael Malice earlier on, was it last year? But anyway, the Mark Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz, he has been very interesting to say. They're reading books like The Ancient City, who was that, the French writer, The Ancient City? Firstanges, I want to say.
Ah, yes. Let's see now.
I've listened to it, and I can't remember the author.
This is, I know which one you mean. God, what was his name? Numa Denis Fustel de Coulanges.
Yes, that's Coulanges, sorry.
Or Bouvard.
You know, that's very old book, very interesting. But these guys are listening to stuff like that. They're listening to Bronze Age pervert. Why do you think you're a Colosseum? Come on. They're and I think it's by accident, but I think all empires happen by accident. The British Empire happened by accident. We just wanted, you know, we went out for a nice cup of tea and came back with an empire. And that, as far as I can see, these are the only guys who are positioned to take power. I can't see anything else.
No.
You know, I do buy into what AA calls a global American empire. I think that's true. You look at WikiLeaks, and it's this constant pressure from America on every country in the globe to conform. And I think that's under threat. I think we're part of it in Europe in different ways. Maybe it's not quite all generated out of America. Of course, you listen to Curtis Yarvin, and he basically says it's a cathedral American base. I might say, well, yeah, there's still the same kind of thoughts coming out of Oxford and Cambridge and the British media as well. It's not totally centralised, but in essence, yes. And the only people I can't see how they can back themselves in a corner so badly with the indebtedness and with the sheer increasing illegitimacy of the regime. Okay. I mean, we talked about the Brexit and Trump. quite clearly what's happening to Trump, who may not even have wanted to win the presidency at first. But he's the slight possibility that he's going to come from outside the regime and do something slightly different, and they come down on him with everything they've got. And the same with Brexit. And you say this is not a regime is confident. This is a regime that feels itself under threat. This is very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous. Cornered animals are very dangerous indeed, especially ones that are big and powerful. But what is rising up? What's the only thing that I can see that is rising up? And it's pan-national. Okay, it's across borders. It's a lot of it's online, but not only is the players that are coming out of Silicon Valley, and whether that's good or bad, I don't know, or whether they succeed or not, I don't know. But that's what I think is happening in the world. I want to go that way. I think if nothing else, that's the place of safety. I don't think any of us are safe in the regime as it is. I think it's going to, as it goes right back to your point at the beginning, it's getting less and less competent. It comes from a very high bar. When you talk about logistics, the logistics industry does amazing things. You know, the Industrial Revolution and globalization have been incredible, miraculous. You know, you can go into a shop in the middle of winter in Sweden or the UK and buy cut flowers.
Yeah.
You go back even to Victorian times and say, hey, look at my smartphone. And I'd be like, forget that. How can we go to a little town into a supermarket, buy fruit from everywhere in the world at all points of the year? That's incredible. We're starting from a very high place, but I think the competency is rapidly leaving it. Momentum is very powerful. The momentum we've had through the Industrial Revolution and globalization has been very powerful. But it's like a cannonball that's been shot out and arced through the sky. But it's always falling, even before it's got the top of the arc.
Well, I pulled out of Pittsburgh, rolling down that eastern seaboard. I got my diesel wound up and she's a-running like I never before. There's a speed zone ahead, well, all right. I don't see a cop in sight. 6 days on the road and I'm gonna make it home tonight.
Can I ask a specific question here? Like, do you think any of your kids might fancy taking up your trade with lorrying? My point is, like, to what degree the manual workforce and those trades are hereditary anymore? Because that might speak to the point that you're raising now about why logistics become increasingly hard. I mean, I, for one, coming from a farm, neither have the inclination or the capacity to take over a farm. And yet I have, like, if there's one thing that has become apparent over time is that if you cannot formulate a defense for farmers, then there will be, like, problems with regards to not just the sovereignty, but actually just
getting food.
Exactly. It implodes, and it might not even appear. It doesn't even have to do with any devious, like, neglect, or it is neglect, of course, but like it's simply not taken into consideration.
Yeah, sorry, I rather went off on one then, and you asked about guilds earlier on, and I kind of went and did a whole polemic about something you didn't ask. Okay, yes, we're always going to need these things, and to go back to the preppers, right? We can't go back to small-scale farming or hunter-gathering. We don't have the land. Okay, with the population is too high. There would have to be massive amounts of death. Basically, the population would have to shrink dramatically for that to even work. So we do have this system of large-scale farming, of large-scale logistics, of manufacture. We get going unless they're absolute disaster, and then all bets are off. I mean, stock up in ammunition and gold coins, and that's about it. All these things aren't going to go away. You know, if the system breaks down tomorrow, up at the depot, the trucks are still going to be there, and at the warehouses, the food's going to be in the warehouses, and the crops are not going to stop growing. Okay, so there's going to have to be a way that makes those things work. And I think as things get more disastrous, things will decentralize quite fast, but they will decentralize around common interests. And one common interest is work. And so we've had this system of this capitalist system, this this industrial and post-industrial system. But what came before that? And so this is what I'm like, you've got kind of things that push against that, which are, for example, unions, or you could have government regulation that helps out working people. It used to happen, believe it or not. And but before all of that, you had these guilds. And so I was thinking about all of this and thinking, hold on a second, that's really interesting. Because now we've got the internet, we've got cross-border connection to people whose common interest is our work. I've talked to I've got my friend Gordy in the United States, who's also a Substacker, who did a really good does some really good articles recently. You know, the friend I talked about before, the truck drivers had things in common. If I go all over Europe, I talk to other truck drivers. There's a camaraderie because of our job. So that's an interest group. That's a community. And now we've got, because of online, that can be very broad indeed. I'm part of a Romanian truck drivers group. It's called Calais Problem, and it's hilarious because it's mainly people just hurting themselves, but never mind. So you've got these international, global interest groups that are parochial to the job, but not to the nation necessarily, although that still exists. And this is where you get to kind of overlapping interest groups. So could there then be overlapping sovereignties? And that's kind of where I'm going, or maybe that's as far as I got now. But I can see us, and also if you're going to have a new polity and it's going to go, we're going to gain power through meeting some of what people need, or at least, meeting what people need. And if we can find some other organization, some other sovereignty perhaps, who we could use in that, okay, we're going to get these stuff to the shops, and we've got these people who are calling themselves a guild of truck drivers. Okay, let's connect with them. And they're going to handle all of that, the regulation, they're going to handle the training, and they're going to make it better for people. They're not a union, they're not a business, they're not a government department. Okay. And as Yarvin talks about, you've got this idea where a sovereign is going to want to make the people better. He's going to want to build his human capital. But that can happen within a guild, which is not a geographic entity. It's a work-based entity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
You're describing a new kind of like Patreon client system based on different traits. I'm thinking, Kalle, maybe we should, like, together with Graham, build up like a new Hanseatic league with Lorryists, and like, I don't know, we can maybe reintroduce German into different towns in Sweden and just scrap this whole Gustav Vasa thing we've been doing for 500 years or something.
First of all, we should just scrap Germany. I think that's the way to start everything. I think, I love the Peter Hitchens phrase. I think he says, the EU is just the continuation of Germany by other means. I think he's right in that sense. I also had a Greek sort of colleague of mine who said, she said half jokingly when she realized I wasn't sort of a conformist Swede, if you will, that, Germany, like my family says back in Greece, Germany should be bombed every 50 years just to like mowing the grass, basically. I tend to agree. And it's not because of bloodlust either. It's just like practical, because they tend to, like regimes change. Germany tends to be cyclical in its will to destroy European civilization.
But coming back to Graham's point, Germany in this case becomes more of like the rooted national entity as opposed to a trades base with guilds providing like care for its members.
Sorry, can I? Yeah,
of course.
So you could keep Germany, or it might divide up into Saxony or Bavaria or what have you.
Yeah.
But in either example, they can be looking to the guild to be sovereign over that part of the thing. So for the trucking in this case, okay, Bavaria is going to go. The King of Bavaria. That just sounds so good. Is going to go to the king or the head of the guild and saying, okay, we need trucks. We've got farms, and there's going to be a farmers guild. So it's not like you have to divide Germany up, or it's not like you have to keep Germany together for this to work. But like I say, it's very early stage to talk about it working. But at least it's an idea. It's going somewhere. One thing that. And the book is called The Network State. One thing that Balaji Srinivasan, I have to be careful with that, talks about is land last. You build your group first. And some of the stuff in there, I'm not so sure about. We can talk about that another time. But his point of view is that's not how peoples form. They don't form by drawing borders. They form, and then that eventually that will mean property. That will mean, in a literal sense, a country. Okay, and so it's a very Silicon Valley type of book. He's a very Silicon Valley type of guy. Okay, but his whole conceptions of all of his thoughts about sovereignty and nations and countries is fascinating.
I'm very much a believer in that sort of future, for the very sense that I'm seeing it sort of before my eyes. Because I mean, I think Sweden's been one of the, again, more centralized systems, and sort of where the sort of state has, sort of has been relied on, and the sort of social contract has been relied on by most citizens. And you see the breakdown in that now, when the sort of basic services cannot longer, such as policing, such as healthcare, etc., etc. But it's really interesting to see that, what's sort of supplanting this is really family networks, and especially and sadly, in the case of criminality, it's where this is most prevalent, obviously, because it's the most ancient form of organizing anything, right? It's happened with migrants in every country, and when the Swedish the state isn't policing or has a sort of monopoly of violence that it used to have, these sort of networks happened. But it's also happening in a sort of law-abiding sense of if you know a tradesperson, if you know a doctor, if you know this, if you know that. And it's very sort of late, in that sense, late Soviet, where you see these stories of people trying to scramble their personal networks to get sort of scraps of privileges from the collapsing system. And I think it's very much on display in Sweden if you don't have a ton of money, when you can buy everything, and mostly abroad.
But I'm thinking also, since you made reference to the Soviet Union and its collapse, like I think you mentioned this in some post, Graham, that we're approaching a position similar to how in the Soviet Union you would say they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work. That they pretend to, I don't know exactly what would be the equivalent here, but like they pretend to be Democrats or represent us, and we pretend to adhere to their morals. I don't know what would be the corollary here. But what I think is interesting in this regard is that it comes back to, in a way, it bypasses an ideological conversation to come back to what works. Like, logistics will always be needed. And what I find compelling about how you describe something new being formed here is that it's sort of, Calais gonna hate me, but original Marxism it's in the sense that it's very like modes of production oriented. Like, people will need logistics. So if you can organize around that principle, then sovereignty will eventually emerge and a new language will emerge around that.
No, but it's not originally Marxist, because, I mean, Marx's whole thing was, to divide people into capitalists and the people who actually, sort of get exploited, the working classes. So it's really not a Marxist point of view at all. It's sort of the late Marxist sort of idea that you sort of adhere to, that is really, going back to sort of material basis. But that's not Marxist, in my view.
No, but the reason why... Okay, but you just give pushback here, Kalle. The reason why I would call it Marxist is because you try to formulate...
No, the reason you call it Marxist is because you'd call anything you'd like Marxist, Johan. It's really that easy. Sorry.
No, no, but thanks for the slander.
The referee's fight about Marxism between you two, is that what's happening?
Okay, we're going to definitely cut this shit out. No, my point is that you're trying to formulate a new elite. You're trying to say, like, this is around which a new elite can be formed, which is not parasitic, which is not sclerotic, which is not like falling off their chair and dying, but which can go into an arena and fight. That's my point here. That the society,
Sorry, I think events will take over and it'll become more organic. When if you're talking about at the elite level, at the global elite level, that's where I see the Silicon Valley guys. But that leaves many gaps below it for stuff that still needs to be done. And this is this is my proto idea. It's not fully formed, and maybe I shouldn't talk about it. Too late. Anyway, but of having a kind of, well, it's a guild. It has a kind of sovereignty within an occupation, and it's in a Yarvian sense is a monarchical. Maybe that's the answer. What are my kids going to do? They're going to inherit my Truckers Guild, but it's a kind of long-term thing that's going to be interested in the long-term welfare and human capital. I think it's a great phrase of the people within it, as opposed to a business which is looking to maximize the gain from the people before the next report and accounts. And how that did I have to be careful here because I think you guys learn a lot more than I do especially about Marxism, but it seems to me that would be better. It would retain more price signals. I think that's the problem with Marxism is you lose the price signals. It seems to me, from my limited understanding, that's absolute killer for Marxism. That was the killer for Marxism, is you lost the price signals. You also built this sclerotic bureaucracy that leads to Chernobyl. And interestingly enough, I think in history, when history is written about this, COVID will be seen as this regime's Chernobyl, but that's another thing.
I think it's a fair analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. But so the thought about this guild is it would be actually constraining the market in some ways. You know about game theory, you know about the ice cream stand game theory thing. Okay, so if you have a beach, say the beach is 120 meters long, okay, and you've got two guys who want to run ice cream stands on the beach. Well, logically, you want one every 40 meters.
Yeah.
Okay, so that all of the people on the beach they've got equal access to the ice cream stand. But what will happen is they both end up in exactly the same place opposite each other. And the reason why is because one goes out to 40 meters and the other guy goes, I know what, I'm going to move mine to 50 meters, because I'm going to have a bigger catchment area. Then the next guy is going to go, oh, well, I'm going to move mine to 50 meters, and eventually they end up in the same place. Most towns, all of the car dealerships are in the same area. You ever seen that? You ever noticed that? Why almost always you find a McDonald's and a Burger King next to each other.
And the H&M.
And there won't be any fast food. Yeah, and it's the same thing. That's the game theory thing. That's what leads to that. And I spent so much time explaining that, I've lost the plot of what I was trying to say.
No, but you were on to... Sorry, Carl. Yep.
I know how guilds is basically negating that sort of premise.
Yes, yeah. So, but the guild in my vision of this, and it's all it is at the moment is a vision, the guild is controlling the market a little better. He's not letting those inefficiencies get into the market because he wants to build the entire market. The guild's looking 40, 50, 60 years out. And if he's a guild of ice cream vendors, he's going to go, guys, no, sorry, you're going to lose your guild license, if you both end up in the same plot, because that's not good for all of us. So it's not Marxism and it's not full-on game theoretic capitalism. It sounds dreadful if I say somewhere between the two, but it's kind of not like either. And this is how the guilds, I think, Johan, you're a historian, so you should, hopefully you know a lot more about this than me. But so that's what happened in the guilds before the Industrial Revolution, and they would do social things. They would give people burials. They would help with healthcare. So they would be doing social because again they want to build the social capital. They want to build the community. But they would also say, and this is what AA talks about in one of his videos about, they would be saying, okay, you're going to have all these blacksmiths. Okay, they're part of the guild, but only one per village. You're not going to have a village over there with no blacksmiths and a village over here with 50. You're not going to get your guild license if you all go in the same place. Sorry. And also the guilds would be hereditary. So someone's guild license, for want of a better term, would be passed on to their children, which is actually one of the things people never talk about in our society is how there's no continuity, there's no stability. Maybe key people aren't having kids and there's this birth rate crisis. They're not having kids because they don't know what their kids are going to do. They're going to go to university and come out and do a bullshit job that they hate. Well, if you know, as a historian, you're in the historians. Well, kind of academia, you've got in some professions, you kind of got this anyway, because you've got in the professions, you've got in trade. What would you call them? Yeah, kind of trade institutions, like for lawyers and for accountants and so on. So it still exists in some places. Yeah. But if you know that if you have a child, at least one of those children is going to be able to take up your profession. And it as a right, okay, that's going to encourage you to have more kids, surely. And this is a big problem. This is actually one of the biggest problems we're going to face. All of these things we're talking about, we're going to get to 10 years' time where I'm going to be pretty old. And the only thing people are bothered at is there's not enough people. The birth rates are plummeting so much all over the world. Countries like Thailand, they're not having enough kids. But anyway, that's where I see an idea of a guild fitting with price signals, which I do think are very, very important.
No, but just to
okay,
yes, but just a final point. I think let's start off with I think demographics is sort of a good place to end on, in a sense, because I believe this is where a key thing why we will end up in a sort of scarcity or post-globalist sort of world. Because China peaked with a population, I think 2 years ago, in the middle of COVID. They'd had the population peak, and now it's going down. Today, they're in a recession. They're talking about major shocks to their system, which is, by the way, our system, because we're linked with them in every possible way. And when China goes, in a sense, and it's only a question of time, because with that sort of country, you can't change the sort of trajectory of the colossus of the, it's the Titanic iceberg analogy, and probably trying to veer off course even a slight a few degrees will sort of only cause more harm. But why I believe the sort of theory of sort of a neo-feudal sort of future that sort of it's implicit in the thinking of guilds, in a sense, or sort of the power vertical view of patron-client relationships and whatnot, which is sort of feudal, is that it sort of gives also meaning. In that sense, you still have guilds in some countries in Europe, and especially in southern parts. You have them in Spain. You have them in Italy, and they've been seen as reactionary and very backward-looking. And I think the Spanish ones are mostly social clubs or religious organizations, but still they're very much the core of a lot of social circles. And this is sort of, I believe anyway, what a large part of the sort of Protestant West is really missing, or the non-Latin West is very much missing, because it's very atomized and it's very depressed and it's very susceptible to, delusions coming from either the right or the left. Let's just put it that way. And I think really any sort of solution has to be a social one, and it has to be where we started out, really, a sort of tribal one. But tribal in the sense of family, and tribal in the sense of community, and tribal in the sense of really having something to fight for. Politically or physically. If we're going down that path, which I think is really, it's not inevitable, but it's very possible. That's the sort of basis you'd have to build anything on. However, the sort of state above that looks like.
Yeah,
I think that's great. No, I didn't. I think that's great. Do you want to respond to that, or?
No, I'm just thinking about it. I think about tribes and communities. I think in a very ironic way, considering all the talk about gender, we tend to think in a very binary way. I am this nationality, not this nationality. I am from this nation, not this nation. I'm from this group or not that group. Politically, it's insane. I'm left or right. There appears to be your only options. Left, right, or maybe a centre. You can't be off at a tangent somewhere, and you can't have an overlap with different interest groups. And so where am I going with this? Again, this taps into the thought about a guild. It taps into what Balaji Srinivasan is talking about, of having these interest groups where people can be in different ones. I'm an Englishman. I'm a truck driver. There's two interest groups. I have a lot in common with a truck driver in Romania and the United States. And I have a lot in common with other Englishmen as Englishmen. They're both true. They don't have to be either or. And I think we could go in that kind of directions where people are part of different things. They're not just Swedish or English or British. Sorry. Again, that kind of thing becomes easy to think about when you're British, and it's divided up anyway. And that's where my thinking is going. You see what I'm saying? We won't have these kind of binary. We won't have these binary citizenships. Perhaps that's the best way of putting it.
And it sort of opens up something else than the sort of, because the modernity has been Westphalian in that sense, right? You've had that sort of unitary state, or I mean, even in the UK, you have sort of it's an ironical twist, obviously, but you still have that sort of modern government of you don't drive to Wales and suddenly you change lanes because you're driving on the other side of the road, right? You still have the common law system. You still have very much similarities, and because of a lack of a people, that's sort of crackling now. We see really much cracks in that system that sort of seems irreversible. So I think it's an very interesting pick.
I think in a way, Calais, you summarized it pretty well also on my end. So I think for me, I think we can definitely end on that note.
With you two starting a Hanseatic League and me starting a guild, is that what's...
Yes.
Okay, we'll do that then. That's easy.
And we get rid of the Germans, and everything will be fine.
Hasn't that been history for the last 100 years? Please, let us get rid of the Germans and everything. Then
I think more than that, to be honest. I like
Germans.
I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, on that note, thank you very much, Graham.
Oh, no, thank you, guys. Great fun.
Good for us, if not for you.
It's fine. It's great. It's always good to talk to people especially if you've got some strange ideas. Thanks for you guys. Thanks for giving me the time. I appreciate that you really know what you're talking about. I'd like to hear some more history about the guilds of the medieval ages because, despite having the idea, I can't seem to find much about them.
You could expect.
Sorry to harken upon one of my pet sort of hobby horses here, but I just read it's 500 years since the Reformation in Sweden. I think this year, or last year. Can't remember. But anyway, there's an interesting anthology book I just read about Swedish history 500 years ago, and one of the major things that's really different is that we really got rid of all the guild systems and all the sort of religious associations that were sort of linked to the trades. And even though sort of, guilds sort of existed in the sort of feudal sense for a couple of 100 years, I mean, they weren't imbued with the sense of community that they were before. And I think that's really interesting because you've had in the UK, you've had sort of inklings of sort of guild labor. There's also like people talking on the left of sort of labor socialism and guild socialism, and that sort of those sort of ideas, which are basically pre-industrial, and it's very interesting because you have a different set of sort of, you're not operating on sort of the modern assumption of catering to, getting power or handouts from a state. You're doing it for yourselves, really, which is it's really archaic, but it's also radical in the modern sense, right? Which is
I think
what you're talking about.
I agree with you, Calais. It's radical, perhaps also in the sense that you come back from a class project to something that at least came from what is a caste society, in the sense that guilds, more like there are the carpenters or the truckers or the bricklayers. And I mean, there are explanations, of course, why a capitalist mode of production would do away with the hereditary aspects, because in a way it's more efficient in the short term in terms of like creating actors that can provide more profit and revenue. But what the caste system offer, which this system has had an increasingly hard time creating, is not perhaps profit, but purpose and meaning. And whether or not that would be a guild system 2.0 obviously is yet to be seen, but the question of purpose remains standing in a way, is what I hear from that's one of my takeaways from you gazing off in the distance on this road that you're driving. And I sure hope, Graham, that you don't stay in the middle of the road, because that's really dangerous. Coming with like a ton-full truck, and you're in the middle of the road. You're like getting rid of both left and right-wing players. It's absolutely centrist, crazy. Radicalism.
Hence which side of the channel I'm on, doesn't it? Yes.
Graham, thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, thank you. Great fun.
Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound up, watch our bandit run. Old Smokey's got them ears on, he's hot on your trail, and he ain't gonna rest till you're in jail. So you got to dodge him, you got to duck him, you gotta keep that diesel trucking. Just put that hammer down and give it hell. Eastbound and down, loaded up and trucking. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. I'm eastbound up, watch our bandit run.